This is an Adventures in Middle-earth actual play using fantasy grounds. You can find session summaries, items and characters on Obsidian Portal, where our campaign is called In the Shadow of the Mountains. You can cross-reference this episode as Chapter 2, Kinstrife and Grim Tidings, Episode 1, Dark Deeds on the Banks of the Anduin. You'll find links to that and our other forms of media for our sessions, as well as an index of this episode in the description. This episode we're missing Amalfrida's player Stuart. Last episode, with the winter over, the company headed up along the Anduin, where they found the bodies of 2 slain Beornings in a boat on the river. Investigating their deaths revealed that the 2 were slain by orc arrows and probably guarded a prisoner who escaped during the attack. One of the men was a well-known Thane of Beorn called Merovech. This episode sees the party make a sombre journey to deliver the 2 corpses to Beorn's Hall.
So we need to get Merovech and his companion up to some Beornings, really. That means spread the alarm and tell the sad news and let everyone know what's going on.
Yeah, maybe figure out what he was doing down here and who got away.
Okay.
So Amalfrida, do we think would it look particularly bad to row into a Beorning community with these 2 corpses in the boat that we are using? Would that look particularly bad or disrespectful, or
cover them up?
No, it wouldn't. I mean, you're bringing them home for burial, assuming that's what you want to do. So it wouldn't at all be. Yeah, as long as you treated them respectfully, with cloaks over or whatever, blankets over them.
Not doing like a weekend at Bernie's or anything.
I'm
totally fine.
Putting your pipe in his mouth and wouldn't be so good. But yeah, and bearing in mind that, so Amalfrida knows that the Carrack is on the river. It's actually, if you look on the map, it's the small island north of the old ford is where the Carrack is. Mm-hmm. So she knows the Carrack pretty well. Her and her father have been there. That's basically where judgment is given to criminals and things. That's where big meetings happen that Beorn organises, is on that island.
So we head that way.
So you can go up roughly to where the Carrack is, and then you'd need to almost like carry the boat or drag it as like a funeral bier or something like that from the river to Beorn's house, because he's a good half-day walk from the river.
But presumably at the will there be people at the Carrack who can help?
Yeah, normally the Carrack has Beornings around, so that's the easiest place to get to.
If we head to there, I'm sure they will assist.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you want to take it up there? Have fun. Yeah. Okay.
And rowing upstream is not a lot slower than walking. You need to take it in turns. It's slow moving, but you can go at a slow walk pace, and you've got your pony with you, I'm assuming, so it's not a lot different to that. So who's going in the river with the boat and the bodies, and who's going with your pony up river?
Monin will not want to go in the river, not with all that metal armor he's got.
So if Hathis and Sigmar, for example, went in the boat, and Amalfrida and Monin went on foot, would that be good, or would people be happy with that or not?
I'll be very happy with that.
Sure.
All right. Go for that then.
You set off. It's a nice spring travel. I mean, you haven't had any problems travelling from Woodland Hall in the last few days to get to here, and so you make good time. Let me just kill the music. And after about another 3 or 4 days travelling up the Anduin, you pass the ford and you get up to the Carrack. You feel a bit bad about the corpses. They're ripe, or ripening, should we say now? But you do make it to the Carrack. As the sun's beginning to set on like the 4th day of travel, I've just shared the Carrack pin on the map for you now, so you can read a little bit about it. But river flows around it on both sides, and a series of huge stepping stones lead to a muddy eastern shore. And there's a small shallow cave bores into one side of the rock, and next to a set of worn steps lead to a flat surface above. So the cave is used for smaller meetings, but if he's addressing basically the Beorning population. There's a big flat surface on top of the rock on the Carrack where he would address them. And Amalfrida knows it's a very sacred place to Beornings. So things like lots of civic ceremonies happen here, like anything from trials, marriages, funerals, war councils, all that kind of stuff. And basically, it's big enough for pretty much any Beorning settlement to send a representative, which is how, I guess, government tends to happen from Beorn's Hall.
Okay.
And there are Beornings around. And so you pull the boat up on the shore, not on the Carrack, and Amalfrida says, "Yeah, we don't have right to go to the Carrack." You can tell she's a bit nervous about being here. This is somewhere where basically the important adults used to go, and she only just considers herself barely an adult now. So she doesn't suggest you go onto the Carrack. You moor up on the eastern bank of the Anduin, and you see Beorning noticed you, and you kind of hails you from the Carrack. Rows across. There's a few boats you can see bobbing in the river there, and he comes up to you, notices Amalfrida, nods to her, and then nods to you all. And then he takes a look askance into the boat. Clearly, the corpses are tied up, and said, in a deep, booming voice, "So, travellers, what do we have here?"
2 dead people, can't you see?
I fear they are of your people.
I'm assuming they were covered, so sorry about that if you uncovered them. But he uncovers them and said, you can hear him sort of grunt low in his voice and said, "It's poor Merovech. Beorn will be angered by this. Where did you find him?"
Where did we find? How far
Yeah,
down
we'll
river
tell
was
him.
it?
Yeah.
Was it 4
About
days?
3 days, 2 or 3 days downriver. Yeah.
We'll tell him exactly, what we know, John. So yeah, 2 or 3 days steady travel down the river.
There's an orc arrows in him.
Ambushed by orcs.
Aye, someone took his sword as well, though.
He starts muttering. "Okay, Beorn needs to hear of this. Will you travel with me so we can provide proper burial for these bodies?" "No, sorry. Leave the bodies with me. I will ensure that they are buried with correct ceremony here at the Carrack. But you need to go and talk to Beorn about this."
Yes.
Leave the boat here, and it matches his boat pretty exactly. The boat he rowed across the river on. "And do you know where Beorn's Hall is?" he asks.
I've been there before.
Okay, he nods and says, "Yeah, it's a half day. I would advise another day won't kill us. Maybe
Don't get it at
pitching camp here, travelling with the dawn, and you should be there by lunchtime tomorrow."
Okay.
So he wants us to stay here, does he?
Yeah, don't be around Beorn's house at night.
Yeah, he suggests not. Well, he doesn't say why, but he suggests maybe travelling tomorrow morning.
Can we use the wee cave over there on the island? Get a wee fire going?
He looks at Amalfrida and you and says, "Aye, dwarf, that's okay. Thank you for asking."
Oh,
I thought he was going to flat out say no there. So, wow, cool. You don't ask, you don't
Well,
get.
no, I mean he's pleased that you've been respectful to Beorning dead, so he's basically doing a favour, and it's exactly what it's for. It's there for shelter for travellers. So it just is managed by the Beornings.
Cool.
Excellent.
So he basically, it's interesting that all the Beornings there, you hear a lot of, it's almost like a wake. They have a lot of discussion about Merovech and actually very positive memories of him. Some of it battle, some of it he apparently seemed to be a really good singer, and there's some like laughter around some of the songs that he used to sing, and they repeat some of those and sing around the campfires. So it's as you'd imagine a good old wake that's going on. There's some drink consumed, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the evening, and you're invited. You're not really invited to really participate because you didn't know Merovech at all or his colleague, but you are on the outskirts of almost like a celebration of his life. And in the end, he comes over and he actually gives them to Amalfrida, but he takes the 2 bear pins that were pinning their cloaks and hands them to Amalfrida and says, "Just give these to Beorn when you see him and explain what you explained to me."
Will do.
Okay. And in the morning, you head out. It's a warmish day, simple travel. to get there, and it's a pretty nice trip over. And eventually, by lunchtime, you arrive in sight of an ancient belt of mighty oak trees. And beyond that rises a high, thorny hedge that surrounds Beorn's Hall. You recognise it from before. A tall and wide wooden gate opens in the thorn hedge to the north, beyond which there's a wide track south that leads to his house and the surrounding outbuildings. And this is what the place looks like. It's very imposing. Beyond the scale even of some of the woodland hall buildings. Especially, it's built to a larger scale slightly. It's like 10 to 20% larger, everything looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So you push open this creaking heavy gate and start making your way towards the House of Beorn. And your spirits lift. You feel as if you've been returning home almost, even though it's not your home at all after a lengthy absence. And you kind of feel much more composed and relaxed. And you're feeling, it looks like you're feeling some sort of real, your bonds of friendship, you almost feel strengthened. You look at each other you had grim faces. Has been a fairly harrowing task bringing these corpses back, but you feel much more positive now. So everyone just coming into the hall gains a point of inspiration.
Cool.
I will add those to your characters. You'll be back here more often.
I just added it, John, so I've taken that one off. That's fine.
You did.
I had 0, so now I've got 1.
Okay, cool.
Does tick mean you've got the inspiration, or tick mean you've used inspiration?
You've got it.
Check means you've got it, and so you uncheck it when you use it. So I did provide Monin. Monin had 2 because you got 1 for your video write-ups.
Okay, cool.
That's why you have 1 already. So you're met along the track to the hall by some dogs. So they're sniffing at you and Juan. Juan looks absolutely in his element. These dogs, he's not a part of their pack at all, but almost like instantly recognize him, and instantly he falls into the hierarchy there. There's no just a bit of sniffing and then he's happily tails wagging. It's a strange environment. You don't see trained dogs behave like that very often. And so it's really strange. And for the last maybe 100 feet or so towards the hall, maybe 200 feet, the dogs pad along either side of you. And there's probably about 6 or 8 of them. And then as you get closer and closer to Beorn's Hall, they start to whine until eventually you're very close to the hall. They're almost wailing. And it sounds like they're in mourning. It's very strange.
Mm.
And as you come up to the hall, on the porch of his house, it can only be Beorn. There's a vast Beorning there with a huge ruddy beard and a thick mane of dark hair, sitting there looking at you. And he looks like he's carving something or whittling a piece of wood on the porch of his house. And Sigmar, you notice that, and you whisper this to your colleagues, but my oh my, I think he's carving that wood with his fingernails. So he's not even using a knife. His nails look incredibly, they're tougher than the wood, tougher than the oak that he's carving.
I'm getting out of here.
He's whittling something with his fingernails. And this is what he looks like.
And how he picks his nose.
And how he wipes his ass.
Okay, so you kind of walk up, and he looks at you all. So what's happened here? Something's happened, hasn't it? He says to you.
Mona will nod.
Yes, we found 2 of your people.
You've come from the Carrick?
Yes.
Come in. And he puts down the thing he was carving, and it's an incredibly well represented squirrel. It's a small carving he started, and it's almost like carving it perfectly from top down. To the bottom half is just a round bit of wood. The top half is a really well formed squirrel, about half finished. Puts it on a side table next to him where he was, and he turns his back and enters this hall. You go in behind him, and he takes you to a table, sunlight coming in. It's fairly weak sunlight, but you sit there, and he sits with his elbows on the table, hands clasped in front of him, And you can't help but notice the size of his shoulders. It's vast. He is a really, really big guy. Right, give me a direct account of what you saw. No weaselly words, just want the facts. What happened?
Well, there was a boat pulled up onto the shore. 2 bodies, dead a couple of days, full of arrows. Noticed the sword of one was missing. Crossed to the far bank, found 2 dead orcs impaled by a spear. And that was it.
There were cut bonds in the boat.
Oh yes, that.
Arrows were orcish.
And the
So
bodies.
he's not saying anything. He's just waiting for you to talk.
Yeah, the bodies. Both the bodies bore your pins, and hopefully Amalfrida will reverentially produce the two
Amalfrida
pins.
takes the pins out and says, "Yes, and one of the bodies I recognised as your Thane Merovech." And his eyes really his brow furrows and then his eyes darken. And he says, "Orcs so close to my house. They were either greatly daring or very, very foolish. Either way, they have killed my men, and that I will not allow. I sent Merovech south to the other villages along the Great River. I told him to sort out arguments and make sure all was well. I guess from the sounds of it that he and Otto were bringing a prisoner back to me for judgment." He shrugs and continues. "I never want..." And it's almost like he's like looking inwards when he's not looking at you saying this. And he's almost whispering, "I never wanted to be a ruler of men, but if they choose to follow me, then I must keep to my laws." And he punches his fist with his hand as he says that. "And them that break my laws must come before me in a trial at the Carrack." He then asks about a purse of silver. So I gave Merovech a purse of silver coins. Did you find that?
I didn't look through the boat.
No, we haven't. We took the bodies as we found them with all the with everything they had. We presume up to the Carrack. So it was not mentioned to us, but that does not mean your colleagues and brethren at the Carrack haven't, found it, retrieved it.
Okay. He nods, and Amalfrida reinforces what you're saying, and he takes you at your word. So prisoners probably stole the money as well. He nods to himself. Grim days. Any news of the wider Wilderland in your general travels? I always need to understand potential threats to the Vales here.
The 2 things I have picked up are that the elves, you may well know this already, the elves are in increasing numbers. And there was rumour from daring trappers, to indicate that maybe dragons are still lurking in the barren lands of the Withered Heath, but that is far to the north.
Yeah, I'm aware of the elves. That's sad. And I have heard rumours of dragons, but not many dragons as you're describing. Thank you. Anything you have been doing in the Vales?
So there's some, as you're probably aware, in the mountains anyway. In the high pass, there's goblins up there. We had to rescue a wee hobbit, and I had to go down in some goblin halls into some ruins and along near the ring fort. So you might want to clear them out at some point.
He nods and thanks you. Hobbits, there are not many of those small folk around here. From not the easterly inn.
Yes, indeed.
Dindy.
Yes.
He smiles and says, "They're fine fellows. Make some good beer as well."
Yeah, Dindy got himself in a little bit of a mess, but we helped him out. He's home safe.
Good food as well.
Fantastic. I always like hearing about people killing goblins. For his part, he relates that he's been troubled lately by news of orcs crossing his land from the east. They're basically coming out of southern Mirkwood, he thinks. And some travellers through his halls claim that the growing strength of the Free Peoples has driven the orcs out of their old hiding places, and is forcing them to flee Wilderland. But Beorn shakes his head at that. He says, "I don't think we'll be that lucky, and also strong actually." And he's convinced that something else is behind the movement of these orcs. He doesn't know what it is, but there's much too much movement recently coming out of the southern Mirkwood area that is to do with just normal orc movement. I mean, he's not sure whether these orcs would have been part of that or not, but he's concerned about that. And you've been talking for about half an hour, and it's past lunch, and he says, "This talking's hungry work," he declares, and he claps his hands. And the lady you originally met, actually, if you remember, the elderly lady at his hall, opens it and comes in with it's really interesting. So in comes a whole flock of sheep, several of those hounds you saw, and it's incredible. The sheep have got trays balanced on their backs, and they walk in, and the trays, and it's the most natural thing in the world to Beorn. You just think, well, obviously this is something he does all the time, and the trays, they come and stand next to the table, and the dogs stand on their hind legs and put their paws up on the table, almost like people. It's really, really disconcerting, and Huan looks up at them quite enviously. He's a well-trained dog, but not that well-trained at all. And actually, the dogs they're not serving you, but they take like chicken legs and things off in their mouths very carefully and hand them to Beorn on their hind legs. They kind of lift up and pass them to him, and he takes them from their mouths and eats them. So it's a very, very weird dinner that you're having. Sorry, lunch that you're having. The food's amazing though. It consists of fresh baked bread, a stew with lots of herbs and vegetables, and then some mead that you're washing it down with. And other Beornings coming in from, looks like they've been working. Some of them pretty hot and sweaty, coming in from around the nearby homesteads, and others come in. Looks like the word is spread about Merovech and Otto's death, and some are coming in to pay respects, and they're looking like they're obviously planning to head out to the Carrick, where their final burial will happen. So he, the kind of food, the feasting goes on for a few hours. He invites you to stay while he considers and he mulls over things. There's a smaller group of folk come sit down for an evening meal. It looks like he's still unresolved. You can hear him sort of saying, "Oh, what is to be done?" He's talking, sort of muttering himself. So what I'd like you to do, just from your overarching interaction with Beorn, is one of you who normally does all this sort of talking, and I think it's Hathis, needs to give me an intelligence traditions roll.
Okay. Yep.
Which is essentially an audience check. So you've basically had an all-day audience with Beorn, and it's how is this going to impact his view of you? So
Open
give me
or tower?
You can add 2 based on what you did and how you handle yourself so far. So in the tower, and click +2 at the bottom before
Yeah, I've done that.
Okay. Nicely done. Okay.
I can do traditions.
Okay, so I will. He says, right. It's he seems to be nodding to himself as he says, right, it's time for bed. Well past sundown. You may sleep in the hall tonight if you want. And you feel I mean, it's incredible. None of you normally sleep that well, especially on the road. You basically almost got a half eye open permanently all night, listening for strange sounds and things. But you sleep like babies. Just not. I mean, very well, not really bad.
Getting up squealing.
Getting up and squealing every 3 hours, yeah, and demanding food. No, you sleep extremely well. And although all of you awake simultaneously to the noise of some tremendous animal growling and snuffling somewhere by the house in the middle of the night, but the sound itself disappears pretty quickly. So all in all, very, very nice evening you pass, and a very good night's sleep.
Good.
And it's interesting. So Beorn comes back in at breakfast time. he sees you're awake and not really knowing what to do. He's making, and he looks like he's cooking himself. He's making some toast and slathers a large slice of cheese on that. For breakfast, you can't help but notice there's about a dozen orc helmets piled on a table next to the front door as you kind of walk past it, and you can see that one or more of them have been dented and struck by a massive force.
Yep.
And then much more bloodthirstily as you look out the door and up the path again, outside the stead itself, there are a dozen pikes with fresh orc heads on them. And he's just whistling happily to himself, and he puts down a plate of toast and cheese in front of you, and then takes a huge iron kettle off the fire and fills a strange teapot. Looks like it's made with some weird greenish metal painted with bird pictures. And he said, "I was busy last night, lads and lasses. A dozen orcs in my land without so much as a by your leave. Not that they would ever have gotten my leave to do so. The death of 1,000 orcs might pay for the deaths of Merovech and Odo. I would sooner have my friends back, but at least some justice has been done. Now, I also found signs, for Prince and Sense, the night speech of bird and beast, that there was a third man on that boat, as you guessed. He was a prisoner, and it looks like he escaped when the orcs attacked, as you guessed as well. He went south, and he must be found." So he says, "Wouldn't normally ask a non-Beorning to do this, but Amalfrida, you've impressed me, and your fellows here. Yep," and he nods to himself. "I'm impressed with you. I want you to find the man, bring him back alive. Will you do that for me?" And he says, "Amalfrida, I know people need to make a living," and he gets a fat purse of coins out and puts it on the table, and it sort of thumps down at a head just inside you.
Mona licks his lips.
And he said, "I'd really appreciate this as a favour to me, and hopefully one day I will be able to repay that favour for you. Are you willing to undertake this? Track down that prisoner?"
Absolutely. If you ask us to do you a favour, I'm sure we'll do you a favour.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we know anything of this prisoner, his identity, or how we might recognise him?
You don't know. I mean, he doesn't even know who he was. He just knows where there's tracks there. Yeah. But clearly, if Merovech was bringing it to him, he's an important prisoner.
Yes. And Merovech's sword, which if the prisoner took it, may help us identify him at least. Is there any characteristics to Merovech's sword, or was it a fairly normal sword?
He describes it, yeah. So it's fairly standard, but he describes a deep scratch across the hilt in one place.
Okay.
It would only refer to that, but it's basically a fairly standard Beorning sword.
Okay.
And where on Old Beorn did you send Merovech? So that we may retrace his route.
Yes, I think we need to ask at the villages along the way and find out.
Basically, he was travelling down the river, not going deviating too far, but basically the Beorning steads all the way down, probably as far as the Gladden River. So down to the east. We don't normally go much further south than the Gladden Fields, and then back up. He was been gone for a few weeks, so he would be maybe travelling a day or two off the river to the Beorning steadings around there. So what I've done is his promise of repaying this favour to him, I've put in as an item, so you can remember that in the future in the party sheet, and I've also put the 50 silver he's provided you in the purse.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and he also invites you to attend the funeral tomorrow. Sorry, not tomorrow. Today. It's going to be held this evening. If you're interested in attending that, and he's looking hopeful that you will.
which case I think we should.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, you head with it looks like a lot of his hold head to the Carrack, and there are dozens and dozens of very sombre Beornings on the Carrack when you get there. The funeral of Merovech and Odo is held that evening. Neither of the two men were married, although Odo was betrothed to a young shield maiden named Avila, Avila. And she stands there very quietly and very somberly with red-rimmed eyes. She's refusing to weep, very stoic like Amalfrida. Maybe it's a trait of the Beornings. The bodies look like they've been prepared, and they're brought from there back to the hall in a funeral procession. It's a lot closer than half a day away. Sorry, it's probably half an hour's walk away, where they're interred. And so he honours his thanes by covering their bodies with 2 funeral cloths decorated with golden bees, and he explains that the first night is basically devoted to the funeral rites will take days, but the first night is devoted to honouring the fallen. And the way the Beornings started telling stories and singing songs of their heroism and bravery, Beorn knows them better than anyone, especially Merovech, and his memory is astonishing. He's relaying fighting alongside Merovech and killing orcs and those kind of things, and many different small skirmishes. Do you want to do anything? Because you based on what your knowledge of Merovech was, and to add to that, add your own tales, basically.
What about Merovech?
The only thing we could say was about the 2 orcs impaled on 1 spear, which we saw and no one there would have seen.
Oh yeah.
So So
if he
invites basically everyone who's crossed with Merovech, and so pretty much everyone present here they're all in his hall now. Take a turn to, even no matter how small, but describe good deeds or whatever the Merovech or Odo did. So you can add to that if you want with that tale.
Well, Mona won't be looking hopefully towards Hathis, who's got a better turn of phrase.
In which case, in a sort of tone of voice to match everyone else's delivery. So if they deliver in a cheerful, happy way, he will also try and deliver in a cheerful, happy way. If it's very somber and sort of, he did this so well, as opposed to, he was great, he did this, whatever, that he'll try and match the mood of the surroundings, and will relay that, when we crossed the river to see where the orcs had cowardly ambushed Merovech from, we found 2 orcs impaled on the same mighty spear thrown from the other side of the river, killing them both instantly with pinpoint accuracy and unbelievable strength. No mere man.
Give me a charisma persuasion check in the tower. Yeah. Okay. So you can tell Beorn that pleases Beorn to hear. He nods and smiles faintly when you mention that, and as if he's right. Yeah, I can absolutely imagine Merovech doing just that sort of thing. He knew him really well. And so the evening passes with many stories of his heroism, but also smaller things about healing injured creatures and things like that. He's a true Beorn. You end up in the late in the evening, and Beorn comes up, and it's strange. He doesn't go up Amalfrida. He comes up to Hathis, and his massive bear-like hand, he thumps it on your back, and like spilled chicken legs all over the table and stuff. Like mead comes out of your nose, even though it's a friendly pat. And he says, "You, sir, Hathis, isn't it? I'm very impressed with your honesty, your candor, you and the whole crew." And he nods and says, "If you ever need my help, you have but to ask. You are a true Beorning friend." And so he's Amalfrida's like, her eyes nearly pop out when he says that. And so basically any interactions you're going to have with Beornings will be favoured. He basically, his word will spread around the community very, 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 very fast. And yeah, you did everything perfectly from what his expectations were, basically. So, and the role you got didn't hurt.
Nice.
Extremely good. Well done, guys. Nicely negotiated. Okay. So he, in the following morning, he describes where he scented the trail of the prisoner on the banks of the great river. It appears that he emerged from the water a short distance downstream, and You don't know how good a tracker he is, but you assume extremely good because he described the area. He even described, I cut the heads off the 2 orcs. So he found those almost immediately based on your description. He obviously knows the river very well. But he seems that the prisoner emerged from the water a short distance downstream and then headed south along an ancient path. You don't know, nor does he, the number of days that have passed between Merovech's and Odo's death and your discovery of the boat. You don't know how much of a head start he has. So he suggests that the prisoner might return to the lands he came from, i.e. some of the settlements south of the old ford, maybe even on the edge of the woodland lands. So that's what he suggests. You need to kind of plan a route down there and maybe then make some plans to go and visit some of the settlements there.
Yeah.
Assuming that this is where the guy came from.
Yes. Well, if Merovech is taking him away, people must probably have known about that unless he was a complete loner that lived, out on his own and nobody knew the story. There's a high chance people knew that Merovech took him away and then he reappeared a few days later. And you know what? People now know that Merovech is dead.
Yeah.
We could try and follow a path. So I guess we start with trying to follow the trail and see how far that takes us. Presumably we lose the trail and then we just ask around in the steads or whatever they're called until we get a clue or pick up a trail.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, we're going to do some embarkation planning. It's about a 60-mile journey, open terrain in free land, so it's pretty straightforward. You're on foot, should take about 3 days. So what I'm going to need is whoever the guide is.
That's Sigma, I believe. Oh, hang on.
No, I think you're the guide.
Yeah,
I think
sorry,
Sigmar
yes.
is the scout.
That's it.
So you're making an embarkation roll, Hathis, which is okay. So this is where the modifiers come. It's a D12 modified by your survival proficiency bonus, whatever
Survival
that is.
proficiency is +6, so D12 +6.
Plus half your wisdom bonus.
My wisdom bonus is, I think, 6. So half of that is 3. So that's D12 +9, I reckon.
Minus peril rating, which is a vast peril rating of 1, so it's 8. So D12 +8. So you can, in the modifier box, you just type 8 in there, I think, or
yeah, and then
it works, and then just roll a D12. Yeah.
3 + 8 is 11.
It's 11. Okay, and that gives you this.
I don't know if high is good. You'd think so, because the pluses would help, but never mind.
So you embark with light heart and a real sense of hope, resolute and determined to cleave to your path regardless of hardship or setback. And just remember this: it's really, really joyous. Maybe it's Hathis' route he planned, maybe it's the time in Beorn's Hall, but every one of you has advantage until the first time you fail an ability check on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just keep until you fail an ability check. So you're very resolute, almost like the strength of Beorn. Maybe it's his mead or his bees or something, but
I preferred it when you said it was Hathis' route rather than.
Obviously Hathis' route.
Excellent map reading.
And someone, could you roll me a 1d2 -1? I'm not sure how you can do that.
That's a 1.
No, if you roll a 1.
Oh, a 0 to 1. Okay, yeah. Who do you want to do that?
roll a d20. Someone roll a d20. If it's up to 10, it's a 0. If it's above 10, it's a 1.
Someone else can do it. I've done too much rolling.
Oh, you've done it.
D2 -1, 1.
Okay. Interesting.
You all die.
Very interesting. So it's on your second day as you're traveling. You come across a little set back from the banks of the river, a set of ruins of elder days. No idea how old, but it features carvings of men-like figures battling monstrous foes, which could either be orcs or even trolls. And so you spend a bit of time exploring and investigating that. Everyone make a wisdom check. Do it in the tower.
With advantage?
Yes, because it is a check for the rest of this. It's so advantageous having that very high success on a travel roll.
So just a wisdom check at advantage. It's not even a save, it's just a wisdom check. Oh.
Wisdom check at advantage, yeah. Okay, thank you. So it's interesting. Your interpretation is all the same from this, of these carvings and these battles that you're exploring and investigating in this old ruin. And you're actually filled with more hope because you see real successes and the shadow being killed by these heroic men-like figures, and everyone gains up to their maximum of 2 inspiration now.
Bloody hell!
Wow.
Ding!
So you're inspired by what you've seen. Also, your arrival roll, you can get an additional +1 modifier when it comes time to make that.
Are you noticing that down, John?
Yeah. So I'll note that.
Bloody hell, we're powering up.
Yeah. Metagaming thought, I've got some serious shit coming our way.
Yes, exactly. I find your lack of faith disturbing, Neil.
So you've crossed the Beorning lands. There's no outlaws. You don't come across anything like that. It's a pretty straightforward travel for you, and you get to the destination where you originally found the boat. You find that quite a straightforward way, and then you arrive there in good order, basically. What I would like you to do is you're basically searching based on what Beorn described to you from what he saw of the tracks heading south. Every player hero, you can make 2 skill checks using either investigation, intelligence roll, or a wisdom, perception, or survival roll. Which, with 1 now, that's pretty good for you. But also, you're at advantage until you fail one of these at the moment as well. So good luck with that. I think you're all at advantage on those right now. So whatever your choice, intelligence, investigation, or wisdom, perception, or survival.
So survival +6, perception +4.
That's Monin. Thanks, Monin.
So we're at advantage. So
thank you, Sigmar.
And is this in the tower, John?
No, that
yeah.
I haven't rolled it yet.
Sorry, yeah, that was in the tower.
So the options are survival or perception, yeah?
Perception, yeah.
I'll do survival.
Okay, so unfortunately, Sigmar, you didn't really spot anything of note, and you lose your advantage from now on. The other 2 did, and you still retain it. So you see, you find a dead orc in a gully, in a stony gully, a little way back off the river, and it looks like when you examine the corpse, you saw that its head was chopped clean off with a sword, and it looks like it wasn't killed in this gully; it was dumped there. You also, about a mile, maybe 2 miles south of the boat, and you didn't find where he crawled out of the water. You couldn't find those tracks, but you come across a farmstead. It's pretty isolated. There's an old man called Geral that you meet there, he's an old Beorning, and he's looking at you as you kind of parallel walking along the river, and you see his wooden house, and he's looking at you. Do you want to go up and talk to him?
I think we should.
Yep.
Amalfrida, as a young Beorning lady, should probably take the lead in conversation.
Okay.
But we'll be 1 step behind her.
So she gets talking to him, and she's respectful, a bit like almost like a young girl is to an elder, and an elder and a better. But she comes back out. He doesn't invite any of you in, but after like 10, 15 minutes, and she says, interesting. His name's Geral, and he says that a young adventurer stay with him a few days ago,
Mm-hmm.
and left after one night, and he left him a silver coin as payment, which is very generous for Beornings don't tend to do any of that. And he says he's an odd sort. His name was Oderic. Respectful and generous, but just a bit odd. So yeah, that's interesting. So silver coin
his name
was
is
provided
Oderic.
to him. Oderic, Oderic. Yeah, I'll put both those in the chat. So the name of the old man is Geral, and the name of the man that stayed with him is Oderic.
And he gave away rather generously a silver coin, and
Yeah,
Beorn hinted that there's a pouch of 50 silver coins, so maybe he's feeling rich and glad to be free and alive, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And do we know which way Oderic went, or where he said he was going, or anything like that?
Yeah, he said he was heading south. He came from north, with the direction you've come from, and he was heading further south.
Okay. So we try and pick up the trail.
Sure. You carry on walking. I mean, you only spent like 30 minutes there. Towards the end of the day, you meet. There's a group of woodmen, and they are coming up the river towards you. And you hail them. And there's two women in the party. Sorry, there's one woman in the party. So you get to speaking with them, and they tell you that they passed through the village of Stonyford recently, where they heard tell that there was been a bloody murder there.
Oh.
And this puts the clincher on it for you. Some Beorning named Oderic murdered another hunter, apparently an older man called Rathvik. And according to the tale, Rathvik caught Oderic in bed with his wife. The two fought, and Rathvik was mortally wounded.
Right.
Ooh.
So it suggests that Oderic was from Stonyford as well. So do we know where Stonyford is on our map, John?
I can point it out.
Do we know? Can they give us directions to Stonyford?
So Stonyford is pretty much there on the map.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean it's south of the old ford, which would tie in to Beorn's hunch about he may have gone home to a village of his or whatever. You're not far off it. You're probably half a day.
So we probably need a plan because he's got a sword. He knows how to use it if he's chopped an orc's head clean off with it.
Yeah, true.
He may well say that the orc's ambush was completely fortuitous, and that's how it's looking. But he's still he's on the run, isn't he? Even if he didn't kill either Merovech or the other chap, circumstance opened up for him and he just fled and went back home.
Yeah.
He's killed an orc. He was nice to the old man, so he hasn't done anything wrong in that sense, but Beornings asked us to bring him back alive.
What does Amalfrida know about murder? Is it paid off? Could it be paid off with the Weir Guild? Is it normally just a capital offence?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolutely zero tolerance there. He would be in danger of his life, to be honest, in Beorning culture for murder.
Even if it was self-defence from a jealous husband?
Well, the two fought doesn't say how.
Self-defense is very different, but premeditated murder is very, very.
Doesn't sound like murder. If the two fought, he caught him in bed with his wife. The two fought, and we don't know the circumstance of that fight. So he could.
And I mean, this is rumor right now,
of course,
guys.
Absolutely. So we're not judge and jury. He needs to face justice. I think Beorn is a pretty straight up guy, if ever there was one. And we've been charged with taking him to Beorn for the justice that he's so far evaded because of fortuitous circumstance.
Yeah.
He could have been, the classic sort of standing there in his pants going, "I'm sorry, mate, I didn't realise she was married," and the guy could have come at him like a nutter with a sword and he just happened to be the better swordsman and managed to save his own life.
Is better swordsman a euphemism for something with being better with his
a bigger weapon.
I'll mark Stonyford on the map as a pin, so you guys can see where it is. So it's right next to the river. It's not actually on that island there, but it's on the east bank. Amalfrida has heard of Stony Ford. It's actually pronounced Stainford in the language of the Vales. With an acute accent on it, but there's been a ford at Stony Ford for hundreds of years, she knows, and the river was once passable hill, but obviously no longer. Tumble down pile of stones atop a low hill here, once a watchtower that guarded the road in a time where kings ruled the land. The village remains there, and a few wooden huts cluster around a foot of the mound by the river. Folk here really just survive by fishing and hunting, as they've done for many generations. So that's what she knows of the little village. It's a small, very small settlement. And she knows that then a bit like her little settlement of what was it called, Crofter's Vale. It's pretty close knit. There won't be many Beornings living around there. They don't welcome outsiders or strangers. That's what she does know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're heading off. You bid farewell to the woodland folk, woodman. Sorry, and you start heading south. It's about you'll get there probably late afternoon to the village on the final of your 3 days.
I guess so. We can talk about a plan while we're walking along, if we have a plan.
Yeah, well, you guys.
They might protect him because we might be seen as outsiders, although we do have Amalfrida with us. They might hide him. He might leg it. He might say I'm being kidnapped by out-of-towners.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I suppose we're moving quicker than Beorn's word, so we're not going to be known yet.
Rathwick might have been a horrible old man. Everyone might have known they were having an affair, and Rathwick might have an evil temper, and you never quite know how the story's going to get spun.
As you arrive at the village, you were travelling down.
Silence.
You were travelling down the path into the village from the north, and it looks like you've been spotted long before you got to the village. It's on a bit of a rise, and village elders come out to meet you. There are 3 Beornings who were walking down the path to see you. There's an old greybeard who's leaning heavily on a staff. There's also a much younger lady, female Beorning, and a pretty large-looking Beorning warrior, with well armed and armoured, and they're kind of walking down the road to see you. So that's where we'll leave it, and your interaction with them we can pick up at the next session.
And that's where we're going to leave this episode. So I wonder what's in there. Is the fugitive in there? Do they hate him? Are they harbouring him? Well, we'll find out next session. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing. And I do recommend you do subscribe, because I don't publicise these episodes as much as I used to. I don't put them so much on the Facebook groups or tweet them or anything like that, because I'm hoping really that most people who want to listen to this now are listening to it. But if you subscribe to it, at least you'll always know when we put these up. I'm going to try and aim to put these up on YouTube on a Monday now, or a Sunday night, back on the Monday, because I've got very slow broadband where I am at the moment. The actual podcasts, though, are normally up on a Thursday night. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next episode. Happy adventuring. Cheers. Bye-bye.